Imagine waking up and hearing that the president of another country was captured and flown to the United States to face trial. No negotiation, no extradition hearing, no drawn-out diplomatic process, just taken. It sounds like something straight out of a Hollywood movie, but the real question people are asking all over the world is this: could this actually happen in real life? And more importantly, can the President of the United States legally arrest another country's president? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, the answer may shock you. Let's start by clearing up a major misunderstanding right away. The President of the United States does not personally arrest anyone. Arrests are carried out by law enforcement agencies such as the FBI, the U.S. Marshal Service, or sometimes the military acting under legal authority. So when people say the U.S. president arrested another president, what they really mean is this: can the United States government legally bring a foreign president into custody to face U.S. justice? That's the real issue, and it's far more complicated than most people realize. First, let's talk about charging and indicting a foreign leader. Under U.S. law, it is absolutely possible for American courts to indict and charge foreign officials, even very powerful ones, if prosecutors believe they committed crimes that fall under U.S. jurisdiction. This has happened before, including indictments for drug trafficking, terrorism, and sanctions violations that allegedly harmed the United States. An indictment, however, is not the same thing as an arrest. An indictment is simply a formal accusation. It does not mean the person is physically in U.S. custody, and it does not mean the U.S. can just go and grab them wherever they are in the world. This is where international law enters the picture. And this is where things start getting tense. Under international law and the United Nations Charter, every country is considered sovereign. That means its territory, government, and leadership are protected from unauthorized interference by other states. One country's police or military cannot legally operate inside another country without consent, United Nations authorization, or a valid claim of self-defense. Using force inside another country just to enforce domestic criminal law is generally considered a violation of international law. This principle exists to prevent chaos, wars, and constant foreign interference. Now let's talk about the single biggest legal shield protecting foreign presidents: immunity. Sitting heads of state usually enjoy what is called personal or status-based immunity under international law. This immunity means they cannot be prosecuted or arrested by foreign courts while they are in office, no matter how serious the allegations may be. International courts and legal scholars have repeatedly confirmed this rule, not because leaders are above the law forever, but because global stability depends on it. Without immunity, any president traveling abroad could be arrested by a hostile government, and diplomacy would collapse overnight. So, under normal circumstances, a sitting president of another country cannot be arrested or tried in U.S. courts. That's the rule most people don't hear in the headlines. But like many things in law, there are exceptions and gray areas, and this is where curiosity turns into controversy. One possible scenario involves travel. If a foreign president leaves their own country and travels to another country that cooperates with the United States, that third country could decide to arrest them under its own laws and then extradite them to the U.S. Extradition is the formal legal process where one country hands over a suspect to another country for prosecution. It's slow, political, and often contested, but it is the normal and lawful pathway. That said, many countries refuse to extradite sitting leaders, and some countries don't even have extradition treaties with the United States. So while this path exists, it's rare and extremely sensitive. Now we get to the part of this story that has shocked the world and sparked intense debate. Before I continue, let me quickly ask you for something important. Please take just a second to like this video. And if you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe now. Your support helps us grow and keep bringing you content like this. Alright, let's continue. In early January 2026, reports emerged that the United States had captured Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and transported him to New York City to face U.S. drug trafficking charges. According to multiple reports, this did not happen through extradition, diplomatic surrender, or voluntary travel. It allegedly involved U.S. force operating inside Venezuelan territory. This single event ignited a global legal firestorm. Critics argue that such an action violates international law by using force without United Nations authorization or the consent of Venezuela. They also argue that Maduro, as a sitting president, was entitled to head of state immunity, which should have protected him from foreign arrest. From this perspective, the capture represents a dangerous precedent, one where powerful nations enforce their laws across borders without regard for international rules. Supporters of the U.S. position argue something very different. They point out that the United States does not recognize Nicolás Maduro as the legitimate president of Venezuela, claiming his election was fraudulent. This matters far more than most people realize. In international law, immunity is closely tied to recognition. If a country does not recognize someone as the legitimate head of state, it may argue that person is not entitled to head of state immunity in its courts. This argument is not entirely new. In 1989, Panama strongman Manuel Noriega was captured by U.S. forces and later tried in U.S. courts. One key reason his immunity claim failed was that the United States did not recognize him as Panama's legitimate leader. Because of that, U.S. courts treated him more like a criminal defendant than a protected head of state. Supporters of the Maduro capture argue that a similar logic applies here. However, there is an important difference. While Noriega lacked broad international recognition, Maduro is still recognized as president by several major countries, including Russia and China. That makes the legal situation far more complex and far more controversial. Recognition is not universal, and international law does not always bend easily to one country's political position. Another layer of this debate involves U.S. domestic law. Under certain U.S. legal doctrines, American courts have held that once a defendant is physically present before the court can try them even if the manner of capture violated international law. In simple terms, a U.S. court may say, how you were brought here is a political issue, not a reason to dismiss the case. This creates a shocking reality where something can be illegal under international law, but still proceed under domestic U.S. law. This is exactly why many legal scholars and governments are alarmed. If kidnapping or forcibly seizing presidents becomes acceptable practice, the entire international legal order could unravel. Today it's one country, tomorrow it could be another, and no leader would ever feel safe leaving their borders. So what can the U.S. legally do without sparking international outrage? The legal options are limited but clear. The U.S. can investigate and indict foreign leaders if it believes crimes fall under U.S. jurisdiction. It can request extradition through treaties and diplomacy. It can arrest leaders if they travel to cooperative countries. And it can support international prosecutions through global courts, though even that has limits. What the U.S. generally cannot do under normal international law is send forces into another sovereign country to seize a sitting president simply because it wants to enforce its own criminal laws. That crosses a legal and moral line recognized by most of the world. So here's the shocking truth most people don't expect. There is no simple rule that says the U.S. president can arrest another country's president. What actually determines whether it happens are politics, recognition, immunity, international law, and power. In rare and extreme circumstances, a foreign leader may lose protection if they are no longer recognized as legitimate, if they leave office, or if international authorization exists. But outside of those narrow situations, such arrests remain legally controversial and deeply destabilizing. The final answer is this. The U.S. president cannot normally arrest another country's president, but under extraordinary and disputed circumstances, the U.S. government may still bring a foreign leader into custody and put them on trial, even while the world argues whether the act was lawful. This is not just a legal question. It is a test of the global order, the balance of power, and the rules that keep nations from turning law enforcement into international chaos. And that's why this question matters far more than it seems. Now, if you've watched this far, that tells me you care about understanding the truth behind the headlines, not just the noise. Please subscribe, like this video, and share it with others. New videos like this are coming, and you don't want to miss them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.